The MTL for Veve is supposed to happen at the end of this month, and whether or not that happens is up to us to kind of figure out over that time. But I'm still going to be trying to accumulate over the downtrend of what I believe will happen. So in this video, I'm going to discuss with you what I believe is going to happen during the MTL crash, what I'm going to be picking up, and how you should maybe be thinking about other things when it comes to this MTL being released. So let's talk about that. Welcome in everyone, my name's Andy, and I appreciate you taking some time out of your day to come watch this video on the channel. Just before we get started, if you are enjoying the content, you want to support me further, you can hit the subscribe button, and if you want to support me further than that, you can join the membership. Okay, so we have been kind of promised, kind of not on Twitter for months on end now that MTL was coming at certain times. And every single time it's been delayed. Now, each time this has happened, there's been a sort of build up of selling that's been going on when people are anticipating that it's coming, and then not happening, people selling off even further, and that sort of accumulation of then buying back in once something big maybe comes along. Over that time, stuff like Disney were released, some big comics were released, Star Wars was released, and there was a few other things here and there that really got people going and excited about what was to come. But of course, MTL and being able to take your money out is something that's been lingering in the community for the past year now. Because those promises were made that weren't actually kept up on, there has been some downtrends, and the way that I believe MTL is going to go now is different to the way I thought it was going to go if it were released last year. The problem obviously is that right now we are in pretty much of a bear market when it comes to NFTs. Now, it's not to say that you can't make money, and it's not to say everything's gone to zero, but what I am saying is that a lot of people right now are holding their money as there's new regulations coming out. There's a lot of new things that are on the horizon that we don't really know what's going to be happening with, and just the overall market, not only with that sort of NFT field, but stocks and crypto are both significantly down from where they have been at during the highs at certain times throughout the last couple of years. Due to this, there's going to be a lot of people panicking, there's going to be a lot of people uncertain, there's going to be a lot of people selling off because they want to recoup at least some of their investment with what's going on. And in the past, when I made a video on the MTL, the way I thought it would go was that in the first few days, we would see people sell off, but after that, we would see quite a quick rise up as there's a lot of new investors coming into this space as they have the ability now to take money out when they want. However, now that this has been delayed for so long, there's a lot of people in this app that have not been able to get out since arriving. I believe there's going to be quite a big drop off on a lot of the collectibles when this arrives. And the only thing that I think can actually maybe twist that and help the accumulation phase of a lot of people joining in is if there's extremely positive news when it comes to Veve and Ecomi overall when this MTL becomes live. This could be things like the OUP becoming live, MCP becoming live, or something else that would really spark a big interest in new users coming into the platform when this is announced. I could of course be totally wrong when it comes to all of that, but that is my thought process and the way it's going to go. I think the MTL will be announced that it's coming out on a certain date. I think a lot of people will sell off, and then once you can actually sell, a lot of people will sell even further before accumulation starts to happen for those who have been waiting for the prices to reach those all-time lows. I unfortunately haven't been in crypto since 2017. I wasn't in that phase where the crypto winter happened for a few years and all of that was going on. I only got into crypto at the end of 2019, and I only got into NFTs maybe the middle of 2021, a little bit further on than that. There are obviously areas that I am very unsure of, and there are areas that I don't know how it's really going to play out. But when we're looking at historical data and what has happened in the past, these things can last months and even years before something starts to arise again. And Veve and Ecomi sort of built their foundations within the crypto bear winter, which was one of the most detrimental ones that we had had so far in this crypto sphere. So now that we're coming back into it, it's going to be interesting to see how these trends react, especially since NFTs as a whole really went massive over the last year, having insane amounts of volume as well as insane amounts of valuations on certain companies that have been building up in this space. So for me, what I'm really going to try to do is play my cards right in the right manner, and that's by accumulating when everyone is panicking. I've met a lot of people who are in Veve where this is their first ever financial investment, and at that, it could be their first ever sort of collectible investment too. That means the easy novice mistakes are going to be made just like everyone else does when they start literally anything in the the world. And because of this, I'm going to try to stay a little bit of ahead of the curve when it comes to that, because as everyone else panics, they will too. And we do tend to find that in these types of markets, because of the types of investors that are in here, when someone panics and that starts to gain traction, a lot of other people follow and therefore drive the price down, even when it doesn't need to be driven down the way it's actually happening. This time, that's when I'm going to try to pick up quite a lot of things and hold for the long run, as I do still believe in the project and what they're aiming to do. Whether that's going to be a massive financial return or not, I still really do enjoy what Veve are aiming for and the partnerships that they've been creating over the last coming years with the relationships that have been built. Like an airdrop in an NFT space, I think this MTL thing will allow people to start picking up some of the things they like to do, and will be a massive sell-off when it's actually announced, so that they can get their money back, they can recoup their investment, and they can take something out that they may have invested. Because there's also a lot of people who came in here during the Disney time and also the January pump, which means they've probably lost a lot of money since investing into Veve. I'm a little bit more lucky, is that I came into Veve a lot earlier on, in about April of 2021, before I have an upper hand on what I was able to get for the prices. I think I got Todd at 300 gems, Walt at maybe 2,000, and there was a few other things that I was able to pick up at different times, just purely because I was a little bit ahead of the curve on when I was making decisions and how I was doing it. And this is the exact same play I'm going to try to make with this. I don't believe this will be the last time Veve will ever get a pump. I do believe there'll be a lot of people who will come into this space and things will be swept up quite quickly if the right investors or the right collectors come in at the right time. As I said before, unless Veve have something extremely positive that happens at the time of MTL being announced, I don't see the run-up happening right after MTL is announced. I actually see an even further downtrend of what we have been seeing recently. Again, it's one of those things where you really shouldn't be putting all of your money, all of your eggs in the basket of what I'm saying. Again, at the end of the day, I'm just someone who can only have knowledge of one person. I try to learn from a lot of people and make my decisions based on a variety and sort of average my own understanding out. But then again, you've got to do your own research with this. You've got to understand it for yourself. And inevitably, these are risks you're taking in hopes that it makes sense and works in your favor. So for me, this is just my own thought process. It could be totally wrong. I make better judgments in the future when opportunities like this arise again. You're wondering then, what are the ones I'm going to be focusing on? What are the areas that I believe are the best places to look at and the best places to maybe pay attention to? Now, there are probably 3 areas that I am going to be looking at. Biggest brands. This is the brands with the highest level of collectors in them, and this is also significant pieces. Now, I'll go through a little bit of them. Some of them overlap anyway, because biggest brands and then brands with biggest collectors in them are sort of similar. The best example I have is probably something like Star Wars. Star Wars is an incredibly massive brand in a whole, worth billions of dollars, now owned by Disney, as well as a massive collector fan base who collects many things when it comes to Star Wars. So for me, these pieces are something that people will be after. The Darth Vader, the lightsabers, the posters, these are things people want to hold and want to actually have. And with this technology improving over the next few years, I could see these things becoming more of a part of our physical world as well, where people are having these frames with their NFTs involved in them, as well as just something that is showing off more of your identity as a person through your internet persona. So for me, these big brands with the biggest collectors involved with them are going to be something that I will definitely try to pay attention to. We've obviously discussed like things like Winnie the Pooh in the past, where how big of a brand that actually is, but comparing the collectors of Winnie the Pooh compared to those with Star Wars, it's sort of night and day. Yes, Winnie the Pooh is one of the most successful brands in the world, however, it's not the same level of collectors that are involved in Winnie the Pooh, and therefore things like Star Wars might just overlap it and might overtake it no matter on that. But that is sort of what leads me on to the significance of some of these pieces. Steamboat Willie, Winnie the Pooh, and a few other individual artists who have released insane pieces on the app that could be very well received in the future if they go the right way. Again, it's one of those things where speculation is really at the forefront of it. You can only do so much research before you're understanding it. Even at that, you still miss out on many things. I mean, I was stupid enough to make a video on comparing the Star Wars comic book with the Doctor Strange comic book and comparing the physical ones in real life, saying that the 9.6 was 10 or 15x more than the Star Wars Wars 9.6, when I didn't realise there were only a very, very small amount of the Doctor Strange in circulation compared to the thousands of Star Wars. That's what I mean by the lessons that we're learning over the time, because we're not paying attention, doing our due diligence when we're actually having this research, and why it's so important to make these mistakes, to learn from, and then adapt as you move further forward into the future with it. So for me, these significant pieces are ones I'm going to be holding to basically have a better understanding of if it works, why it does, and if it doesn't, why it doesn't. Because are people going to pay more attention to something like the Star Wars lightsabers in the next 5 years? Or does a significant piece, something like the Winnie the Pooh or Steamboat Willie, hold that intrinsic value to actual collectors who are coming in here? Do they care more about the Star Wars lightsabers, or do they care more about the significance of pieces? This will be something that we'll only be able to tell over the next few years and see where people are actually investing their money or wanting to adapt their collection for that. The final one I'm going to look at, and I actually forgot to mention it, was Season 1 collectibles. Whenever I've looked at anything, it's always the first of something that people really, really seem to love, and that's what more often or not runs up the price for other things. The first comic books are the ones that are usually the most expensive. The first cards are usually the ones that are the most expensive. The first releases of something are usually the ones that are the most expensive and sought after, especially years after them being out. I mean, Pokemon cards and that sort of thing took about 20 years in order to get to the price that they're at today. Same as Yu-Gi-Oh! And some of the baseball, basketball cards took even longer than that for them to actually come into fruition. So yes, this might not be a short-term play by all means, but even if we look at it, stocks and real estate and all that sort of stuff aren't short-term plays anyway. Same as physical art too, a lot of them don't actually look for the short-term plays but the long-term ones. So are these going to become significant in a decade's time? Is the company even going to exist in that time frame? Those are some of the questions you sort of have to ask yourself when you're looking to pick these up. And because the Season 1 edition sizes were pretty low considering how many people were on the app at that time, that is one of the things that we'll see more and more of those number of editions on the market lowering quite significantly. Now again, this is not to say that if there's only 10 on the market right now, there couldn't be way more people if the price continues to rise and people are buying, because there is still that X amount of people who hold these things from Season 1, but it is to say that they are going to be more scarce than something that has 100,000 editions compared to something that was released in Season 1 with maybe 1750 editions being one of the highs that were actually released at the time. These are a few things I'm going to be doing during the MTL sort of crash, or what I believe is going to happen during that time. Who knows, it could rise up during that because there's a lot of people who have been waiting for MTL and want to get in. But because we're in a bear market at the moment, I don't know if people are going to be taking risks. Again, that's something to look at even further, because the biggest brands in the world are less risky or seen as less risky than some of these new projects that are coming out. I'd be really interested to know what you think of how this is going to go and how you're going to play your cards when this happens. Be sure to let me know down below. I know the video on the screen right now will be something you'll love to watch. Have a fantastic day.